All right, honors, let's get started. We are going to analyze Act 3, Scene 2 first. And ask yourself a couple of questions right now. Where are we in the play? What day is it? What time is it? And how do you know? Hopefully, you came up with that it's Monday and that it's probably sometime between 4 to 6 o'clock because we know that Romeo came back to talk with the guys. It was after they got married, and that was between 3 and 4. So, after all of the prince's decree and the banishment, it is clearly now between 4 and 6. But remember that Romeo was not in the scene to know he was banished. But since we just left the guys, we know that we can't pick up to see where Romeo went. Instead, we have to flip over to Juliet. So, Act 3, Scene 2 is with Juliet in her house. Now, again, I have a question for you. I want you to think about if you had just an exciting thing like her just getting married, and then you had to go home and sit and wait for the next exciting thing to happen, what you might be thinking. Because basically, after Romeo left Juliet, she must stay inside and wait for him to come back later on that night. What's going through her head? Well, she's excited. She, in her initial speech, starts out with "Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, on towards Phoebus's lodging." Well, all right, no for your quiz. This is what type of literary device? Well, Phoebus. Remember, Shakespeare is heavily alluded to today, falling short just to the Bible. However, the other typical alluded to texts are mythology, particularly Greek and Roman. Phoebus, by the capital letter, is a reference to a name, and the name of a Greek god. Phoebus was known as the god who was going to strap the sun to his chariot and drag it across the sky every day. And according to Greek and Roman mythology, that's the reason why we have our day. So if we look back at our lines, "Gallop apace," she's talking to Phoebus's steeds or Phoebus's horses and basically asking the horses to run faster so that this day will be over and Romeo will come. She keeps talking about being excited and references that it's like so tedious is this day. It's like the night before some festival to an impatient child that hath new robes and can't wear them. Think about it being the day before summer break or the day before you're about to go on a vacation or a trip to Cedar Point. The time seems to take forever. Now, if you notice, this is a pretty hefty speech. It is the third type of speech. You know an aside, you know a monologue, but this is the third type of speech and the last type of speech you need to know for the play. It's got a really crazy name. It's called a soliloquy. And a soliloquy is in plays when the character speaks to himself or herself and tells all the feelings that they're feeling inside. And none of the other characters know what's being said, but we as the audience do. Soliloquies are important for creating dramatic irony because we know what the characters were really thinking. And as you can see by the soliloquy's definition, it clearly states that it's distinct from a monologue or an aside, because a monologue is a speech that's meant for other characters to hear, like every time Benvolio describes what happens. And an aside is usually short and not really revealing about feelings. So, no for your quiz. Juliet's first speech is a soliloquy, and it starts with an allusion to Greek mythology. So she's all very, very excited when the nurse walks in the door And she says right here, you can see, dropping the cords, throws a rope ladder on the ground and says, there you go. She was supposed to get the ladder that Romeo was going to climb up to Juliet's bedroom with. Now, the nurse is visibly upset, crying and inarticulate, and Juliet doesn't understand what's going on. And she says, "What news? Why do you wring your hands? Why do you rub your hands? Why do you look like you've been crying?" And the nurse is vague. Weary day. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Now, if you think about it, who is Juliet so focused on? Romeo. And we see the importance of not using vague pronouns, because when the nurse says he's dead, Juliet immediately thinks that it's Romeo. And she says, "Can the heavens be so envious? I've been married for just a couple hours. Are you serious?" And the nurse answers back, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, whoever would have thought it, Romeo." And Juliet is still confused because the nurse isn't giving enough information. Now I'm going to step out of plot for just a second here and ask you to take a look at the beautiful language. This is author's craft. Shakespeare is playing on 3 different interpretations of the sound I. I, like as in the pronoun that we use to reference ourselves. I, like when you answer yes, the old time way, people would say I. And I, like physical eyeballs. And Juliet says this beautiful speech. "What devil art thou that dost torment me such? This torture should be roared in dismal hell. Hath Romeo slain himself?" She thinks Romeo killed himself. She's saying to the nurse, "Say I, say yes, and that one vowel, I, shall poison more than the death-darting eye of cockatrice." This is an allusion to the bird that could kill somebody with just a stare. Beautiful, beautiful play on language. Shakespeare loved puns, and this is a great example. And the nurse has finally realized that Juliet's not she's getting that somebody's dead. And so the nurse says, "I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the wound," which only furthers Juliet's confusion. The nurse did see Tybalt's wound, and Romeo is to blame, but still, the nurse is only confirming she saw the death, not the death of who. So Juliet complains, "My heart is breaking. This is terrible." And then the nurse finally reveals, "Oh, Tybalt, Tybalt, the best friend I had, that I would ever see thee dead." And now Juliet is even more confused. She thinks Romeo's dead, and is Romeo slaughtered and Tybalt dead? She thinks that this is the worst thing on the planet. My dearest cousin and my dearer lord. And finally, the nurse clears everything up. Tybalt is gone, and Romeo banished, because Romeo killed him. And Juliet turns. What do you need to know for your quiz? Right here. In this scene, she uses the oxymorons that Romeo was using in the earlier play. She says, "You're a serpent with a flowering face, a beautiful tyrant, fiend angelical," a tyrant and an angel, "a dove-feathered raven, a wolfish lamb." Saying basically, Romeo, you're a facade. You came off to be this wonderful thing, but now I see your true colors. Now the nurse chastises Romeo. She says, "Shame come to Romeo." And Juliet instantaneously turns on the nurse. "Blistered be thy tongue for such a wish. He wasn't born to shame." And the nurse says, "Are you going to speak well of the person who killed your cousin?" And Juliet reminds her that, "I can't speak ill of the person that is my husband." And this speech, Juliet's trying to figure out, why is it then is she so upset? And she tells the nurse, it's not because that Romeo killed Tybalt. which you mistakenly offer up as joy. My husband lives that Tybalt would have slain, and Tybalt dead that would have slain my husband. Why do I cry then? It's because of that one word that Romeo is banished. And because I'm never going to get to see him, it's like that word killed me. Well, the nurse really cannot believe that Juliet is turning, so to speak. And she says, though, I know where Romeo is. Romeo fled to Friar Lawrence's cell. And Juliet says, please go find him. Give him this ring, my wedding ring, that he know this is a for real request. And bid him come to me one last time before he leaves. And then the nurse leaves the scene to go find Romeo, and Juliet stays in her bedroom.